My family publicly humiliated me to control my $950,000 medical practice, then cut me off in front of everyone, so I legally removed them from the business they thought they owned. I am Julian, a 39-year-old neurosurgeon based in Austin, Texas. Most people hear my job title and instantly picture a life of luxury status and country clubs. What it actually looks like is bone dust on your scrubs, alarms blaring at 3:00 a.m., families weeping in sterile hallways, and the crushing constant awareness that a millimeter slip of your hand can permanently destroy a human life. It also looks like having a family that treats your hard-earned success like a publicly traded community asset that they own the majority shares in. The climax of my family's delusion happened on a Tuesday night. The next morning, their accountant would call me in a panic. But that night, my dad chose a family dinner for his grand performance, not a restaurant where people could see him, and not an office where a lawyer could mediate. He chose his massive, heavy mahogany dining table in his upscale suburban home. I know it was exactly 8:14 p.m. because I remember glancing at the digital clock on their stove when I walked through the kitchen. I was still wearing my hospital badge from the Lonia Neurological Institute. I had come straight from a grueling 14-hour emergency craniotomy. My hands still smelled faintly of chlorhexidine and medical-grade soap. My brain was already fried in that very specific hollow way it gets after you have literally held someone's life in your hands and forced yourself to keep your breathing steady and your voice calm despite the chaos around you. My younger sister Chloe had her phone set up on a little tripod with an LED ring light attached to it. The lens was wiped perfectly clean, and she was positioned like she was about to record a makeup tutorial or a lifestyle vlog. I stopped dead in the doorway, staring at the setup. "You're filming this?" I asked, my voice flat. Chloe smiled, but it was a completely dead, warmthless expression. "Just sit down, Julian." My mum's voice floated from the kitchen island. It was soft, way too soft, the kind of voice you use to coax a stray dog. "Julian, please just sit." I walked over and sat down. The wooden chair scraped loudly against the expensive tile floor. My mouth instantly went dry. My hands were freezing, and my brain immediately did what it always does under extreme sudden pressure. It started counting variables: 3 people, 1 recording device, 1 manila folder on the table, 1 clear exit route behind me. My dad, Arthur, sat directly across from me. He slid the manila folder across the polished mahogany like an executive closing a hostile takeover deal. "Sign here," he demanded. I didn't reach for it. "What exactly is this?" I asked, keeping my hands in my lap. He didn't even blink. "We are legally downing you. You are a complete embarrassment to this family." The words hit the air like a clean surgical incision. There was no yelling, no dramatic tears, no build-up, just a sterile sentence delivered as an undeniable fact. Chloe leaned slightly into her phone's frame, making sure the lighting caught her angles. "Say it again, Dad, for the camera." And my dad actually did. He repeated the exact same line with the exact same inflection, like he had spent the afternoon rehearsing it in the mirror. Mum stared intensely at her woven placemat, like if she just didn't look at me, she could pretend this wasn't happening while still fully participating in it. I let out a single sharp laugh, though it didn't sound like a laugh at all. "You are seriously doing this on TikTok?" Chloe's eyes flicked to her screen, checking her framing. "People should see who you really are." "Who I really am?" I repeated, genuinely baffled by the sheer audacity. Dad tapped the heavy manila paper with one manicured finger. "You think you are better than us just because you are a surgeon. You think your job gives you the absolute right to ignore your family whenever you please. You have been incredibly difficult." "Difficult?" Mom echoed from the sidelines, saying the word like it was a terminal medical diagnosis. I leaned forward, resting my forearms on the table. Define difficult, Dad. Chloe's voice went syrupy and condescending. You set time's boundaries. You don't answer the phone when we call you. You don't give us money when we ask for it. You made Dad look stupid in front of Uncle Richard last month. Dad's jaw tightened visibly. You humiliated me in my own community. I stared right through him. I humiliated you because I explicitly told you not to come into my medical clinic and scream at my nursing staff. It is our times clinic. He snapped, slamming a hand on the table. Chloe's smile widened into a smirk. Say it, Julian. Look at the camera and say you understand. I looked down at the first page of the document in the folder. Big, bold, ridiculous letters at the top read, Affidavit of Disownment. Underneath it was a dense block of pseudo-legal language stamped and initialed in random places to make it look official. My fingers actually trembled slightly when I reached out and picked up the heavy silver pen Dad had placed next to it. It wasn't fear making me shake. It was a deep, violently cold anger that I absolutely refused to give them the satisfaction of capturing on camera. Mum finally looked up from her place. Matt, read it first, Julian. No, Dad cut in sharply. Sign it. We are entirely done waiting for you to grow up and respect us. I kept my eyes glued to the ridiculous paper. So, this is entirely about control. Chloe scoffed loudly. It's about consequences, Julian. Actions have consequences. My throat tightened. I tasted a faint metallic tang in my mouth and realized I had bitten the inside of my cheek so hard it was bleeding. I took a slow, measured breath. Okay, I said quietly. Dad leaned back in his chair, looking incredibly satisfied. Good. Chloe's phone captured every single second of it. It captured my exhausted face, my steady hands, the silver pen gliding across the paper. I signed the document without reading a single word of their manufactured nonsense. Then I looked up at the camera and smiled. It was that small, polite customer service smile that arrogant people constantly mistake for absolute surrender. There, I said, sliding the folder back across the table. Dad exhaled a heavy breath, like he had just won a grueling marathon. Mum's tense shoulders dropped instantly in relief. Chloe's eyes lit up with greedy excitement, clearly calculating how many views this viral family betrayal clip was going to rack up. But none of them noticed the most crucial detail. They didn't notice that I had signed more than one document, because neatly tucked underneath Dad's absurd disownment papers were 2 additional pages I had brought with me. They were clean, professionally printed on high-quality legal paper, already notarized and explicitly titled Partnership Redemption and Removal, Lonia Neurological Institute. Effective. Immediately, I stood up slowly, grabbing my keys. Mom blinked, suddenly looking uncertain. Julian, wait. I picked up my jacket from the back of the chair. No, Chloe called out after me, still perfectly framing the shot. Tell the camera how it feels to finally be cut off. Julian. I paused in the doorway, turned around, and looked dead into her camera lens. Thanks for recording this, I said evenly. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I didn't throw a tantrum. I simply walked out the front door, got into my car, and before I even pressed the ignition button, I opened an email on my phone from my attorney, Jessica. The subject line read, Executed documents confirmed. Filed today. To understand how a family gets to the point of staging a TikTok disownment, you have to understand the foundational dynamic of my household. My dad has always used the word investment when he talks about me. We invested heavily, Julian, he would say, treating me less like a human son and more like a high-yield stock portfolio that owed him massive quarterly dividends. The first time I really registered this was when I was 20 years old, just starting my brutal pre-med undergrad program. He had helped cover my tuition, because my academic scholarships didn't quite cover the astronomical out-of-state fees. "You'll pay this back," he told me one evening in his study. "Not just with money, Julian, with absolute loyalty back then." I just nodded. I was young, exhausted, and naive. I thought that was just how tight-knit families operated. I thought the pressure was temporary. It wasn't. By the time I hit my surgical residency, the demands weren't about gratitude anymore. They were strictly about access and control. Incident 1 happened in 2017, during my 3rd year of residency. I had just worked a back-to-back 36-hour shift. I dragged myself home, collapsed onto my mattress, still wearing my bloody scrubs, and woke up 14 hours later to 19 missed calls from my mother. When I finally called her back in a panic, she didn't ask if I was alive or safe. "You didn't show up to Chloe's engagement dinner." She snapped immediately. "I was in the O." "Mum," I answered, rubbing my burning eyes. A trauma patient coated on the table. We had to crack his chest. Dad snatched the phone from her in the background. "You always have a damn excuse, Julian." "It is not an excuse," I pleaded, my voice cracking. "It is literally my job. People die if I leave." His voice went ice cold and razor sharp. Family comes first. That became their ultimate unbeatable trump card. Family comes first, not bleeding patients, not my physical need for sleep, not objective reality. Incident 2 happened in 2020. My dad casually brought a wealthy golf buddy of his into my hospital lobby, like he was walking into a Jiffy Lube. "You'll squeeze him in for a consult today," Dad announced loudly in front of the reception desk, making sure everyone heard him commanding a surgeon. "I literally cannot do that, Dad," I whispered, pulling him aside. "There is a 6-month wait list. There are strict hospital triage policies." Dad smiled at me like I was a toddler, explaining the rules of a board game. "Policies do not apply to our family, Julian." When I flat out refused, he leaned in close, gripping my bicep painfully tight, and whispered, "You are going to deeply regret embarrassing me in front of my friends." Later that same week, my clinic manager informed me that my dad had called the front desk, pretending to be a referring physician, trying to extract confidential medical records about another patient. When the manager shut him down, he screamed at her so aggressively she was left in tears. I had to apologize endlessly. I bought the entire staff lunch for a week. I thought the embarrassment would end there. It didn't. Dad didn't hear the word no as a boundary. He heard it as a temporary obstacle to overcome. Incident 3 was the trap. In 2022, I finally took the massive risk of opening my own private practice, Lonia Neurological Institute, alongside 2 other brilliant surgeons and a small group of private investors. I was drowning in stress. I needed capital for advanced surgical equipment, specialized leasehold improvements, astronomical malpractice insurance, and basic overhead. My dad swooped in with a massive check remarkably fast. "You don't have to go begging corporate banks for loans," he insisted, clapping me on the shoulder. "Let your family handle the burden." I was chronically exhausted. I was proud of my new venture. I was also incredibly naive to think that accepting his financial help didn't equate to surrendering the total ownership of my adult life. The financial help came with dense stacks of paperwork. Dad assured me it was totally standard investor protocol. Chloe chimed in, "Dad is just protecting your assets, Julian." Mum added, "Just sign it, honey, so your father can stop losing sleep over your business." I signed the documents. I was aggressively juggling hospital surgical privileges, a nightmare commercial lease, staff crediting, and the lingering supply chain issues of a post-pandemic world. I didn't have the energy to fight a war at home. I just wanted peace. That is the universal language of a toxic family. Smooth things over, don't make a scene, be flexible. We are only trying to help you. For years, I swallowed the abuse. I would answer their demanding phone calls during my agonizingly short 10-minute breaks between surgeries. I would wire money to Dad's account whenever he casually hinted about a cash flow issue. I let Chloe plaster my name all over her fake charity events because she loved introducing herself to influencers as Dr. Julian's sister. I sat silently through agonizing holiday dinners where they discussed my medical practice like it was a shiny toy they had purchased at a store. I slowly watched it affect the way I moved through my own life. I started shrinking in boardrooms I should have commanded. My surgical partners noticed my anxiety. My nursing staff noticed my flinching when my phone rang. I would laugh off my family's obsessive involvement like it was a quirky, harmless dynamic. But it wasn't harmless. It was a calculated lever of control. They controlled my money, my reputation, my access to peace, and my autonomy. By 2025, my practice was booming. The partnership distributions, the exact numbers my dad bragged about loudly at his country club, were averaging $950,000 a year on the books just for his silent partner shares. Dad absolutely loved saying that number out loud. See, he would boast to our extended relatives. Our family built that empire. He never once said Times Julian Times built that. He never acknowledged that Times Julian Times worked 80-hour weeks for that. Julian lost sleep, sacrificed romantic relationships, and missed every weekend for that. He always said Times Hour. So when I finally hit my breaking point and started enforcing real, immovable boundaries, they didn't hear I am protecting my mental health. They heard the asset is disobeying. And in our family ecosystem, disobedience must be swiftly and publicly punished. Update 1. That bizarre dinner wasn't spontaneous. It was a calculated escalation because Chloe had found out I was planning to buy out their shares. And humiliation gets attention, which is her only currency. They thought turning my life into TikTok content would force me back into submission. They just didn't understand that I had finally learned how to play the game too. If you want to end a cycle of narcissistic abuse, you do not argue. You document, you file legal motions, and you permanently cut the lever of control. The first wave of fallout came fast. It was private pressure, the kind that looks totally reasonable if you don't know the context. Dad called me the very next morning at 6:12 a.m. "Let's talk about this like rational adults," he said, his tone casual, completely ignoring the fact that he had literally downed me on camera 12 hours prior. "I am in pre-op," I replied coldly. He chuckled, a condescending sound, always with the convenient excuses. "Julian," I didn't argue. "Email my attorney." I hung up the phone and blocked his number. Mom texted me at 9:04 a.m. "We didn't want it to be like this. Your father was pushed to his limit. Please don't punish us, Julian. We are your family." Chloe posted the video anyway. I knew the exact moment it went live because my veteran scrub nurse, Sarah, looked incredibly uncomfortable when she handed me my morning coffee at the nurse's station. Dr. Mercer," she murmured, avoiding eye contact. My stomach sank like a stone. "What is it, Sarah?" She reluctantly tilted her phone toward me. I saw the crystal-clear clip on Chloe's public page. It showed my dad aggressively sliding the folder, my exhausted face and profile, and Chloe's massive, bold text overlay. When your arrogant brother thinks he's too good for the family that built him, the comment section was already an absolute bloodbath. Thousands of strangers were calling me an ungrateful narcissist. People were actively tagging my hospital's official accounts. Angry teenagers were demanding context and trying to find my medical license number. My hands went completely numb for a fraction of a second. It wasn't panic. It was just that same cold, clinical anger returning. I took a breath, pulled out my phone, and methodically screenshot everything. I captured the caption, the exact timestamp, the view count, the comments mentioning my specific employer, and a highly upvoted comment where someone wrote, "Report this sociopath to the Texas Medical Board." I dropped all the screenshots into a secure folder on my desktop, labeled Times Family Defamation 2026. Wave 2 crashed down when they realized I wasn't going to call them crying and begging for forgiveness. Dad physically showed up at my private clinic 2 days later. I was reviewing an MRI when my practice manager, Maya, frantically messaged me on our internal Teams chat. "Your father is in the lobby. He is extremely agitated and yelling at the receptionists." I walked out into the pristine, quiet waiting room. Dad was standing with both hands planted aggressively on the front reception counter, looking like he owned the entire building. "Julian," he barked loudly, ensuring the 3 patients in the waiting area looked up. "We need to fix this mess right now." I kept my voice perfectly even and professional. "You cannot be here, Arthur," he sneered, leaning closer. "You cannot lock me out of the business that I paid for." I stared him dead in the eyes. What you paid for was fully repaid with interest 3 years ago. He smirked, a nasty, victorious look. Not according to the way I calculated the partnership units. The patients were openly staring now. Maya was tense, hovering near the panic button. I didn't engage in a debate. I simply turned to the security guards stationed by the elevators. "Please escort this man off the premises." Dad snapped his head toward my terrified receptionist. "You only have a job here because of me. I own him." I felt my jaw locked tight. No, they work for me because they are highly trained professionals. Leave my clinic. No. He was escorted out, but he didn't go quietly. He made sure every single person in that lobby heard him scream, "You are going to deeply regret this, Julian." That afternoon, Maya forwarded me an urgent email from our corporate accounting firm, the exact same firm Dad had insisted we use when he first invested. The subject line read, "Urgent request ownership distribution clarification." I immediately called my attorney, Jessica, and forwarded her the entire email chain. Jessica's reply hit my inbox 5 minutes later. "Julian, do absolutely nothing. Do not respond to them directly. We are proceeding with the executed redemption. I am attaching the legal confirmation and filing proof to the accountants now. Continue to screenshot all harassment and defamation. I didn't scream into a pillow. I didn't post a retaliatory TikTok. I didn't clap back in the comments. I just started documenting harder." I pulled my original partnership agreement from our encrypted cloud drive. I printed it out and grabbed a yellow highlighter. I highlighted the exact obscure clause Jessica had pointed out to me 6 months ago, when I first told her I needed an escape route. Clause 14. B. Removal for conduct harmful to the business reputation. Redemption of all minority units upon written notice. Immediate effect upon execution. Dad and Mom weren't doctors. They were just silent financial partners on paper because they had demanded equity when they wrote that initial check. Chloe wasn't even on the paperwork. She just floated around town, pretending she was a stakeholder. But my parents' names were legally tied to those units, the percentages, and the distribution rights. They genuinely believed that staging a fake disownment meant they could emotionally discard the inconvenient human son while keeping the highly profitable $950,000 annual distributions. They were catastrophically wrong. Update 2. The practical financial harm hit them that same week. Marcus, the lead accountant, called my direct office line, sounding incredibly stressed. He asked to confirm a massive distribution transfer, citing something about new routing changes and family directives. I stopped him immediately. "What specific directive, Marcus, and from whom?" He hesitated, clearly sensing the tension. "From your father, Arthur. He called this morning and said he still has executive financial authority over the accounts." I went ice cold. "He absolutely does not. Email everything he just requested to me and my attorney immediately. If you authorize a single cent to him, you will be held legally liable. CA. When the financial door slammed shut in their faces, Mom tried a completely different angle. She showed up unannounced at my secure condo building, holding a brown paper bag of groceries, trying to pull off some cheesy sitcom apology scene. "I made your favorite chicken soup, Julian," she cooed, trying to push past me. I didn't let her step foot inside. I blocked the doorway with my body and kept my voice dangerously low. "Mom, this isn't about soup. You know that." Tears instantly welled up in her eyes, turning on like a faucet. "Your father is so stressed, Julian. Chloe is getting hate comments now. We didn't mean for the video to go so far. You brought a camera to a dinner to disown me," I stated flatly. Suddenly, Chloe's annoying voice drifted from Mom's pocket. She had her phone on speaker, listening in secretly. "Oh my God, don't be so dramatic, Julian. It was just content for my page." I stared down at Mom's coat pocket in absolute disgust. "You do not get to call my actual lifetimes content," Mom whispered frantically, wiping away her fake tears. "Please, Julian, just sign a quick statement saying you for," and there it was. The absolute truth. Their real goal wasn't remorse or repairing our relationship. It was 100% about controlling the public narrative. I asked her one very concrete question, using the exact same tone I use with patients' families when they are aggressively denying a terminal prognosis. "Where is the original manila folder Dad handed me at dinner?" Mum blinked, thrown off by the pivot. "What?" "The papers," I repeated slowly. "Where are they physically located right now?" "In your father's home office," she answered quickly. "Address, room, specific drawer. What is the exact location?" She frowned, deeply confused by my clinical calmness. "Why does that even matter right now?" "Because I want a physical copy of it," Chloe chimed in from the speakerphone, sounding highly annoyed. "You already signed it, idiot. What now? You're scared of being poor." I didn't acknowledge Chloe. I looked straight into my mother's eyes. "Text me a clear photo of the folder sitting in Dad's office. I demanded tonight. If you cannot do that, never come to my home again." Mom's face instantly hardened. For one fleeting second, I saw the real ugly, venomous resentment slipping through her maternal mask. Then she forced the softness back on. "You are being so cruel to your family," she whispered. I didn't react. "Text me the photo." She turned and left without giving me the soup. That was the exact moment I completely stopped arguing and shifted entirely into execution mode. This wasn't about petty revenge or internet drama. This was about a clean, surgical separation, absolute legal clarity, and a permanent, impenetrable boundary. Because when someone uses public humiliation as a weapon against you, the only safe response is to completely remove their access to your existence. 3 days later, at 8:17 a.m., I got the phone call that confirmed they had finally realized what I had done. It wasn't Dad screaming. It wasn't Mom crying. It was Marcus, the accountant. His voice was tight, high-pitched, and strictly professional. "Dr. Mercer, this is Marcus from the firm. We need to discuss an urgent, massive change in the partnership distributions." I didn't correct him when he used the word times need. I just sat down comfortably in my leather office chair, opened my Times Family Defamation 2026 Times folder, and smiled. "Okay, Marcus, go ahead." He cleared his throat nervously. "We received executed notarized documents from your legal counsel indicating that your parents' minority partnership units were forcefully redeemed, and their management access was entirely removed." "Effective immediately. Yes, that is correct," I said calmly. There was a long, agonizing pause on his end, like he was desperately waiting for me to laugh and say it was all a big prank. When I remained silent, he continued, "I am calling because your father is currently in my lobby, insisting this is corporate fraud. He says he never consented to a buyout. Yay. I have the notarized execution," I replied smoothly, "and my counsel of record has filed the paperwork with the state." Marcus exhaled a shaky breath. He is also aggressively requesting the immediate release of the next quarterly distribution to his personal account. I let that sit in the air for a second. I looked down at my hands. They weren't shaking anymore. They were perfectly steady. That realization surprised me, but it felt incredible. "Marcus," I asked gently, "what is the current annualized value of the distributions tied to those specific units?" He hesitated, typing on his keyboard. "Approximately $950,000 annually, based on the clinic's stellar performance last fiscal year." "Thank you," I said. "Now, I want you to put that exact demand with that exact figure into an email and send it directly to my attorney, Jessica. Do not authorize a single transfer." "Dr. Mercer, he is threatening to sue us," Marcus started. "No," I interrupted, my voice dropping an octave. "Email it now." No, he did. 2 minutes later, my personal cell phone absolutely exploded. Dad, Mum, Chloe, back-to-back group calls, nasty text messages pouring in, voicemails stacking up like bricks. I didn't answer a single one. Jessica filed the formal legal notice that very same afternoon. It was formal, beautifully clean, devoid of any emotion, and packed entirely with irrefutable facts. And then she did something that instantly escalated this from a petty family squabble into a terrifying legal reality. She sent a massive cease and desist order directly to Chloe and my parents regarding defamatory content connected to my professional medical reputation, specifically citing the viral TikTok video. She didn't make empty threats. She cited severe financial damages. She included the date posted, the exact defamatory captions, the tagged medical entities, the calculated harm to my practice, and a strict legal demand to immediately remove the video and preserve the original files as evidence for a massive civil lawsuit. Chloe, being an arrogant influencer who thought she was untouchable, didn't remove it. Instead, she doubled down. She posted a frantic follow-up video that night. The new video featured my dad pacing furiously in the background, his face bright red, screaming, "He stole millions from us." Chloe captioned it, "Rich doctors are all corrupt sociopaths. My brother just robbed our family." That was my absolute breaking point. Not because my feelings were hurt, but because she was actively dragging my innocent nursing staff and my vulnerable patients into her toxic circus. The next morning, I walked into my clinic holding a thick, freshly printed packet. It was 20 pages of time-stamped screenshots, the specific partnership agreement clauses, the notarization stamps, and Jessica's brutal attorney letter. Maya met me in the hallway looking pale. "Are we okay, Julian?" she asked quietly. "We are perfect," I assured her, "but we are going to strictly document everything that happens today." At 10:22 a.m., Dad showed up again, but this time he brought Mom and Chloe was actively live streaming on her phone. Our security guard immediately physically blocked them at the sliding glass doors. Dad shouted at the top of his lungs, "Tell this rent-a-cop to let me into my own damn building." I stepped out into the lobby where the waiting patients could clearly see me, but I intentionally stayed safely behind the heavy reception desk. I didn't give them physical proximity. I didn't give Chloe a clean, dramatic camera angle. Dad pointed a shaking finger at my front desk staff. "This is my business. I own you." I delivered one single practice sentence. It was calm, crystal clear, and loud enough for every witness in the room to hear. "It isn't yours." Chloe tilted her phone over the security guard's shoulder. Tell everyone on live how you legally stole $950,000 a year from your own elderly parents, Julian. I looked directly at her lens and answered like I was testifying under oath in a courtroom. I legally redeemed the minority partnership units under the strict terms of our signed agreement. I stated through my legal counsel, effective immediately. Dad's face twisted into pure, unadulterated rage. You cannot do this to us. We are your family. Mom started wailing loud, dramatic, theatrical sobs that echoed off the clinic walls. We are your parents, Julian. How could you? I didn't flinch. I didn't move a single muscle. The security guard placed a hand on his radio. Sir, ma'am, you need to leave the premises immediately. Dad violently slammed his open palm against the glass partition. Call the damn police, then let them sort out this theft. Maya looked at me, her hand hovering over the phone, waiting for my final authorization. I nodded once. Call them. Chloe's eyes went completely wide. She lowered her phone slightly. She hadn't expected that. She wanted a screaming match. She wanted me to lose my temper so she could play the victim online. She absolutely did not want official police documentation and a legal paper trail. 2 Austin police officers arrived at 10:47 a.m. They stepped efficiently between my screaming family and my terrified staff. They asked basic triage questions and stood silently while Dad ranted and raved about stolen millions and ungrateful children. I calmly handed the lead officer Jessica's legal packet and the printed screenshots of the defamation. The officer read through the highlighted clauses for about a minute. Then he slowly turned to look at my father. Sir, the officer said, his voice flat, bored, and utterly unimpressed. This is strictly a civil legal matter. You have been formally asked to leave private commercial property by the rightful owner. If you do not step outside immediately, you will be arrested for criminal trespass. Dad sputtered, his face turning purple. He is my son. The officer didn't care in the slightest. Leave now. Dad turned to me, his eyes wild and completely unhinged. He hissed, You did this. You did this to your own mother. That is the ultimate line they always fall back on. Look what you made me do. I looked at him and delivered the final boundary sentence I had been silently rehearsing in my head for over a decade. You do not have access to me, my money, or my practice ever again. Dad lunged forward half a step, and both police officers instantly grabbed their belts, stepping into his path. Chloe was still filming, but her hands were visibly shaking now, because for the very first time in her pampered life, her audience wasn't a bunch of gullible TikTok teenagers. Her audience was armed police officers, my professional staff, shocked patients, and an undeniable legal paper trail. They finally backed down and left, but not before the lead officer issued a formal written criminal trespass warning to all 3 of them, and handed me a business card with an official case reference number. I watched them walk out through the glass doors, looking utterly defeated. Then I turned around, walked back into my private office, and told Maya, change every single building access code right now. I spent the rest of the afternoon emailing our corporate bank. I permanently locked down every single financial account where Dad had ever been listed as an emergency contact. I legally revoked all third-party authorizations. Jessica filed the final irrevocable confirmation of redemption and removal with our internal corporate records. It was irreversible. It was quiet. It was completely done. The profound peace didn't arrive like a cinematic movie moment with swelling music. It arrived like a quiet, boring routine. The next Monday, I walked into my clinic, and nobody looked stressed. Sarah handed me my coffee without hesitation or pity. Maya smiled and said, 0 incidents over the weekend. Julian, our accountant, Marcus, now only emailed my secure work address and copied Jessica on everything. There were no more erratic family directives, No more surprise site visits. No more screaming matches in the lobby. Everything was in writing. Everything was clean. For the first time in my entire adult life, I didn't feel like I was constantly bracing for a surprise psychological attack, wearing the deceptive mask of family help. 2 weeks later, my medical malpractice insurer called me. They weren't alarmed. They were just routinely verifying that there was no active medical board complaint tied to the ridiculous social media posts. Jessica had already handled it flawlessly. She had fully documented the extortion attempt, responded to the board, and preserved the digital evidence. Chloe's defamatory videos quietly disappeared from the internet after her own hired attorney finally got it through her thick skull. What's severe defamation and professional tortious interference look like when the target has ruthless legal counsel and endless receipts? She never apologized to me. She just pivoted her content. She posted a tearful, vague family betrayal storytime video with no specific names or details. People in the comments still guessed it was about me, but without the original clip or the name dropping, it had zero bite, zero proof, and absolutely zero power over my life. Dad tried the absolute last desperate tactic toxic parents always try when they completely lose their grip on you. Financial gifts. A heavy, beautifully wrapped box showed up at my condo lobby's concierge desk with a silk ribbon and a handwritten card. Forgive and forget. Family is forever. Inside the box was an incredibly expensive, flashy Rolex watch. The exact kind of watch Dad obsesses over because it screams superficial status. I didn't put it on. I didn't return it to the store. I didn't write him a dramatic speech in response. I simply had Jessica send one single sentence back to him through his attorney. Financial gifts do not restore personal access. Mom tried one last time with a completely different, highly emotional script. She called my personal cell from an unknown blocked number, late on a Sunday night. "Julian," she whispered into the phone, sounding like we were sharing some deep, intimate secret. "Just meet me for coffee. No lawyers, no business talk. Just me and my son." I held the phone to my ear, staring blankly at my living room wall, feeling absolutely nothing but a profound, steady clarity. "You brought a camera to a dinner to publicly disown me." "Mom," I said. Her breath hitched in the receiver. "That was all Chloe's idea, and your father was so angry, I couldn't stop them." "No," I replied, my voice unwavering. "You were sitting right there. You actively participated." Dead silence on the line. Then she instantly tried to flip the script and make it entirely about my responsibility to manage their emotions. "Your father is physically sick over this, Julian. He isn't sleeping." "I am no longer discussing Arthur's feelings," I stated. "Then what do you actually want?" she demanded, her voice suddenly turning sharp and vicious underneath the fake softness. "Do you just want to be alone forever?" I almost laughed again, but this time it would have been a real, genuine laugh. "I want my life back," I said, and I hung up. Chloe texted me exactly once, very late at night, from a burner number. "You ruined absolutely everything. You could have just played along and signed the paper, and everything would have gone back to normal." I stared at that specific line of text for a very long time, because it perfectly explained their entire twisted psychology. They didn't want love. They didn't want a brother or a son. They wanted blind compliance, and I was completely done being the lucrative family asset they could publicly humiliate and cash out whenever they felt like boosting their egos. I blocked the burner number, but I saved the screenshot first. These days, my boundaries look incredibly boring from the outside. There are no surprise family dinners, no quick financial favors, no VIP access to my clinical staff, no backdoor access to my bank accounts, and zero leverage over my professional reputation. If my parents or my sister ever want contact with me, it goes strictly through written legal channels with crystal clear terms and absolutely zero room for emotional manipulation. And the moral of the story is incredibly simple. Even if it took me nearly 40 years of my life to finally accept it, sharing DNA with someone is not a lifetime license for them to abuse and humiliate you. Real love does not require you to sign away your dignity, your peace, or your hard-earned success just to keep a toxic seat at their dinner table. Access to my life is a privilege, not a family right, and I am permanently unavailable for their brand of business.